Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is Mr. Fitness, the body transformation specialist. And in today's video, part 2 of a 3-part series, I'm going to talk about the 8 foods that we took out of Mary's diet to help her lose 80 pounds and to lower her blood pressure by 60 points in just 6 months. Now, if you missed part 1 of this 3-part series where I talk about the 5 foods that we added to Mary's diet, then check the description box below for a link to the playlist. So when Mary and I started this journey, Mary was weighing in at 258 pounds and her blood pressure was 154/99. And I am happy to say that just last week, we weighed Mary in and she weighed in at 173 pounds and her blood pressure was 115/78. And those amazing results happened in just 6 months. So if you're overweight or if you're suffering from high blood pressure, then you're definitely going to want to watch this video where I talk about the 8 foods that we added to Mary's, or we took out of Mary's diet to help her lose 80 pounds and lower her blood pressure by 60 points in just 6 months. So the first food that we took out of Mary's diet was sugar. Now, you probably already know that eating excess sugar is one of the main contributors to obesity, but what you might not have known is that excess sugar consumption also contributes to high blood pressure. Now, when I say sugar, I'm not talking about natural sugar. Now, the sugar I'm referring to is the processed kind, like cakes and cookies and all those type of foods. The foods that most of us, including myself, love to eat, but we know we shouldn't if we not only want to be healthy, but if we want to keep our waistlines from expanding. Now, cutting these foods from Mary's diet wasn't easy. And when I say cut, I don't mean that we completely eliminated these foods, because expecting Mary to never eat these foods again is just not realistic. We've got lives and we've got birthday parties and we go to holiday parties and gatherings. But what I mean is that Mary now has control over the amount of them that she eats. And Mary has so much control now that she considers herself, or she calls herself, a former sugar addict. Now, you might be asking yourself, how much sugar should I eat per day? Well, the American Heart Association recommends that women limit their added sugar intake to 6 teaspoons or 24 grams per day, and men should restrict themselves to 9 teaspoons or 36 grams per day. Now, the second food that we cut out of Mary's diet was alcohol. Now, before you cut this video off, hear me out. Now, similar to sugar, we didn't completely cut out alcohol from Mary's diet. What we did was we drastically cut back the amount that she was drinking. Now, I know it might sound like Mary was this heavy drinker, and she wasn't, but with 1 or 2 glasses of wine almost every night after work, it adds up. And before you know it, with everything else Mary had going on in her life, she was overweight and her blood pressure was through the roof. And we knew at that point that something needed to be done. And according to the Mayo Clinic, having more than 3 drinks in one sitting can cause a temporary spike in blood pressure, and repeated drinking can lead to long-term blood pressure issues. And to top it all off, alcohol can make any blood pressure medication that you're already taking less effective. So I'm not telling you that you need to give up drinking if it's something that you enjoy, but if you have high blood pressure and you're overweight, like Mary was, then I would definitely recommend that you consider cutting back. So the third food that we took out of Mary's diet that helped her lose 80 pounds and helped her to lower her blood pressure by 60 points in just 6 months was Chinese food. Now, because of Mary's stressful job and her late hours, Mary wasn't big into cooking. So it was very easy for her to order out, and Chinese food was her go-to takeout food. And Chinese food itself isn't bad. It's not horrible, but it's the amount of sodium in it. And there's a lot of things on the Chinese food menu that contain as much as 2 to 3 days worth of sodium. For instance, beef and broccoli, which doesn't really sound too harmful, but it packs about 3,200 milligrams of salt, and the ingredients used for cooking it, like soy sauce and like teriyaki sauce, have about 1,000 milligrams of sodium in just a single tablespoon. And think about all the oil used to toss around in the beef and broccoli. All that oil is just extra sodium and extra calories. And even a bowl of soup at most Chinese restaurants can pack as much as 8,000 milligrams of sodium per bowl. And yes, I love Chinese food as much as you probably love Chinese food, but if you want to lower your blood pressure and decrease your weight like Mary did, then consider either cutting back the amount that you eat, or cutting back how often you eat it, or consider changing up what you eat on the menu. So the fourth food that we took out of Mary's diet was frozen pizza. And it's easy to make and it's relatively cheap. And it was another one of Mary's favorite foods. But if you're overweight and you have high blood pressure like Mary did, you'll definitely want to limit how much of it that you eat. Now, one of the things you might have already noticed is that all the foods that we've cut out so far have a common theme, and that theme is sodium. And the combination of the cheese, the meats, the tomato sauce, and the crust adds up that sodium real fast. I mean, one slice of frozen pizza can have as much as 1,000 milligrams of sodium, and you know you never have any leftover frozen pizza, which means you're likely to consume way more than just one slice. So the fifth food that we took out of Mary's diet that helped her lose 80 pounds and helped her to lower her blood pressure by 60 points in just 6 months was ramen noodles. Now, I've got to admit that I still, to this day, am a huge fan of the beef flavored ramen noodle, but we had to eliminate it. And you're probably wondering why. I mean, what's so bad about ramen noodles? Well, the noodles themselves aren't that bad, but it's that little flavor packet. And one of those flavor packets contains 14 grams of fat and has 1,580 milligrams of sodium, which is way too much. So the sixth food that we eliminated from Mary's diet was frozen dinners. And you guessed the reason why. It's the sodium. But why is sodium so bad if you've got high blood pressure and if you're overweight? Well, let's start with the issue of blood pressure, sodium, and your heart, and then we'll get to your weight. You see, what salt does is it pulls extra water into your blood vessels, and that increases the amount of total blood inside of them. Now, with more blood flowing through your blood vessels, blood pressure obviously increases. And it's sort of like turning up the water pressure on a garden hose. The pressure goes up as more water is pushed through it. Now, over time, high blood pressure can injure the walls of the blood vessels and speed up the buildup of what's called plaque. And this plaque is what blocks the blood flow. Now, over time, the added pressure tires out the heart by forcing it to work harder to pump more blood through the body. So that, in a nutshell, is sodium, blood pressure, and your heart. So now, let's talk about sodium and why it makes you gain weight. Well, eating sodium or salt naturally causes your body to retain water. So a lot of the water that you gain when you eat a lot of salt is water weight. And this is something that you've probably already heard of. But what you might not have known is that high salt consumption has also been linked to increased body fat, mostly in your stomach. Now, there's obvious reasons for this. First, just think about the kinds of foods that tend to be higher in salt. You've got your chips, you've got your fast food, you've got your fried foods, all these processed foods. And all of these high sodium foods are also relatively high in calories. And not only that, but as we all know, these foods are really easy to overeat. So am I saying that you should never eat these foods again, or you have to completely eliminate them to get to where you want to be? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you want to lose weight like Mary did, and if you have high blood pressure like Mary did, I would really recommend that you drastically cut back on the amount of them that you eat. So the seventh food that we took out of Mary's diet was red meat. Now, red meat in and of itself is not bad, but it can be for someone that's overweight and has high blood pressure. Now, first off, red meat is loaded with saturated fat and cholesterol. And again, saturated fat and cholesterol aren't necessarily bad, but for someone that's overweight and someone that has high blood pressure, it can be. Now, we didn't completely eliminate it from Mary's diet, but we drastically cut it back. Now, Mary was eating beef 5 days a week, and we cut it back to 2 days a week. And from doing that, one of the first things Mary noticed was that she felt less bloated as a result of not eating red meat. Now, one of the main reasons why Mary might have felt more bloated while eating red meat is because a lot of people, they just don't digest certain foods properly. And a lack of absorbing all the nutrients from the red meat can be one of the reasons why Mary felt bloated after eating red meat, and why she felt less bloated after cutting back on red meat. So the eighth and final food that we cut out of Mary's diet is ketchup. Now, I know that ketchup technically isn't a food, but it's one of those things that we add to a lot of foods. And since we cut back on things like red meat that Mary was eating anyway, it was just natural to cut back on the amount of ketchup that she was eating. Now, when I say ketchup, I don't just mean the red stuff that we squeeze out of a bottle. I'm talking about all tomato sauces and things like that, because all of those things are high in sodium and provide nothing but extra unnecessary calories. So there you have it, guys, the 8 foods that we cut out of Mary's diet to help her lose 80 pounds and lower her blood pressure by 60 points in just 6 months. Now, again, guys, if you missed part 1 of this series where I talked about the 5 foods that we added to Mary's diet, or if you missed part 3 of this series where I go over Mary's workout program, then make sure you check the description box below for the link to that playlist. Also, if you think someone else might benefit from watching this series, these videos, then feel free to share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell notification so you never, ever miss another video that I upload. Well, guys, this is Mr. Fitness, the body transformation specialist, signing off. And as always, where there's a will, there's a way. And I hope you have another amazingly fantastic day. Till next time.